Hello and good evening. Welcome to Strive Defense Dialogue. Today again, we have requested Colonel Rajiv Agarwal to talk to us about the ongoing Israel-Gaza conflict. Colonel Rajiv Agarwal, आपका Strive Defense Dialogue में स्वागत है.
Thank you, Brigadier Bhatia. Thank you for calling me again, and it's always a pleasure.
Thank you. व्यूअर्स, आज का जो हमारा प्रोग्राम है, आज इसको हम डिस्कशन अपनी 25 मिनट तक रिस्ट्रिक्ट रखेंगे और उसके बाद हम सेलेक्टेड 2 से 3 क्वेश्चंस ले पाएंगे, क्योंकि एक फीडबैक हमको मिल रहा है कि हमारे जो पॉडकास्ट है उसका ड्यूरेशन थोड़ा ज्यादा लंबा हो रहा है. तो आज का हमारा टॉपिक जो हम बात करना चाहते हैं वो है इजराइल गाजा कन्फ्लिक्ट. कल राजीव, जब हम इजराइल गाजा कन्फ्लिक्ट की बात करते हैं तो ये सिर्फ बाइनरी थिंकिंग में नहीं है कि हम या तो इजराइल के साथ हैं या हम गाजा के साथ हैं. इसके अंदर एक से ज्यादा प्लेयर्स इन्वॉल्व हैं. जैसे कि आपसे शो से पहले मेरी बात हो रही थी, हमास ने इजराइल पे अटैक किया, इजराइल ने फिलिस्तीन के ऊपर अटैक किया. तो अभी हमारी जो रिस्पॉन्स है वो इंडिया पैलेस्टीन के जो पुराने रिलेशनशिप है उसके मद्देनजर अलग है, इंडिया इजराइल की जो डेवलपिंग कोऑपरेशन है उसके मद्देनजर अलग रहेंगे, और जो हमास के साथ इंडिया की थिंकिंग है एज फार एज टेररिज्म इज कंसर्न, उसके बारे में हमारे जो व्यूज हैं वो थोड़े अलग रहेंगे. थोड़ा सा हिस्ट्री में जाएं तो 1974 में इंडिया पहला नॉन अरब स्टेट था जिसने पीएलओ, जो इसके की चेयरमैन यासिर अराफात थे, उसको रिकॉग्नाइज किया. 1988 में हम पहली कंट्री ऐसी बने जिसने पैलेस्टीन स्टेट को रिकॉग्नाइज किया, और 1996 में हमने अपना रिप्रेजेंटेटिव ऑफिस गाजा में स्टार्ट किया. कल राजीव, आई रिक्वेस्ट यू कि ये जो मैं छोटा सा मैंने एक भूमिका दी है इसके बारे में हमें बताइए कि इंडिया पैलेस्टीन, इंडिया इजराइल और हमास स्पेसिफिकली बिकॉज ऑफ द टेररिस्ट एक्ट्स दैट दे हैव डन, हाउ इज द रिलेशनशिप इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर अस टू डिफाइन. हर एक जगह हमारे जो पैरामीटर्स है वो अलग अलग हो. ओवर टू यू कल राजीव.
Thank you, Brigadier Bhatia. And like you have said, that it is not possible or feasible to, see these three relationships, or I would say two relationships, because India does not have any formal relationships with Hamas. It recognizes only the Palestinian Authority. So it is basically a relationship where you can say India-Israel and India-Palestine. And in this war and even before, it has been, a remarkable story as far as India's policy is concerned, where it has been able to balance many facets of these two relationships to present to the world very, kind of objective and a neutral position, where the world can say that India has acted on its national interest and has done what it should have done. So if we take this war as such, which is going on, today is 7th December, so today is exactly 2 months since the horrific Hamas terror attack on 7th October, when they infiltrated into Israel across, I think, 13 or 14 points and inflicted mass casualties amongst the Israeli community, and which provoked Israel into launching this war, which is presently going on. So when this war broke out, the Hamas terror attack, as well as the response from Israel, India had 4 priorities, and I would list each one of them so that it becomes very clear how India has acted upon each of the things. The first and foremost priority for India was to call out the terror, because India has a very clear position, being itself a victim of terror for last 3 decades, that there is no way that an act of terror can go unpunished or without being condemned. So that was the first priority. The second priority for India was that it had to show support to its strategic ally, which is Israel, with which it has built very strong ties over the past few decades. You might remember that it was only in 1992 under the Narasimha Rao government that Israel and India established
Yes,
formal diplomatic ties.
correct.
And ever since Modi has come in 2014, the trajectory, which was slightly plateauing, has just taken off in northwards, and the relationship has become very, very strong and close. So, third priority for India was that the Palestinian people, the cause for the Palestinian state, independent, viable, sovereign Palestine state, located side by side with Israel, should not be lost cause of. And fourth priority for India was that its people who are there in the war zone need to be evacuated safely and at the earliest, as it has done in the past a few years in any of the war zones, whether it was Ukraine, whether it was Yemen, whether it was Syria, any war zone. This has been one of India's top priorities in last one decade, that it has to do utmost to take out its own force in citizens. So these were the four broad priorities as far as India was concerned, and how it had to shape its narrative in this particular war. So now coming to how it did, the first and foremost was the terror. And if you recall, Prime Minister Modi was one of the first world leaders
Correct.
which condemned this act of terror on his Twitter account on, I think, 7th or maybe 8th of October. And it said that we stand with Israel, in solidarity with Israel, and condemn this act of terror, in the heinous act of terror, in the most strongest term. So that was the first checkbox that was ticked as far as the terror was concerned. Also, when it said that we stand in solidarity with Israel, which is facing this act of terror, it gave a very clear signal that the strategic ally and the alliance that has been built up with Israel, that is to the fore, and India is not forgetting Israel in this hour of need. And the viewers might recall, you might recall, that Israel is one of the few countries in recent past, after the establishment of diplomatic relation, and even before that, although that is undocumented, which has always come to India's help in the hour of need. And especially, we can't forget how Israel helped us militarily through its precision ammunition, through surveillance devices in the 1919 Kargil War. The line of control fence, which has been a stupendous success in 15 and 16 core in Kashmir, owes its
Right.
background to what we saw in Israel and how we did it. So this was how it happened. Third was the cause of Palestine, and promptly after we stood by Israel on 7th or 8th of October through a PM Modi's statement, the Ministry of External Affairs on 10th of October clarified India's official stand by saying that the India's stand and support for an independent and viable Palestine state stood strong, and we support this cause, and that both parties should work towards this cause. And the fourth point, or the fourth priority for India, that was its own people. And India was again one of the first countries to launch evacuation operations from the war torn zone in Israel, and they launched Operation Ajay. It was a multifaceted evacuation operation. We launched aircraft from the Indian Air Force. Commercial flights were launched. People were evacuated through the land border to Jordan, from where they were evacuated later by ground and by sea and by air. So about 8 to 10,000 people were to be evacuated, and all were successfully evacuated. And we saw how the news stories played out when the people returned home.
Correct.
So, if I just summarize in brief before we go into the discussion further, when we say terror, yes; Israel, yes; Palestinian cause, yes; and protecting and evacuating Indian people, yes. So, when you see all these four facets and how India has been able to do it, it is a absolutely fascinating balancing act that India has been able to do.
Absolutely, Kalrajiv. I will just flash a slide. These are the multi-layered statements, partially covering what you have covered in terms of, see, India has supported the two-state solution, which
Correct.
was in the offing. Like you mentioned, it condemned the attack on Israel, also showed solidarity with Israel. But tell me, we are yet to designate Hamas as a terrorist organization. So this is in conflict with, okay, solidarity with Israel is fine, but we haven't spoken about Hamas. We have also called on Israel to show restraint and solve the issue with dialogue and diplomacy. But we are not called for ceasefire. At the same time, 70 tons of humanitarian aid, including 16.5 tons of medicine and medical supplies, have also gone. Doesn't it show a sort of taking all the inputs into consideration before deciding a particular action? So, your comments on the way Foreign Office has handled the entire issue by ensuring that India has a stake and India is able to give support to all the parties as is in our national interest.
Absolutely. So this is what I said, that India cannot have a situation of a zero-sum game, that if it supports the Israel's as a solidarity cause against its threat of terror, that means it is not supporting the Palestine cause.
Yeah,
Or if India says that we support a two-state solution, that means it is going against its alliance with Israel. No, it is not a zero-sum game, and
correct.
that is why I say the word that it is a fine balancing act which was required to be done. And I'll just quote a few examples to show that India has not played either of the sides in this war. So, coming to it, on 13th of October, Prime Minister Modi was addressing the P20 summit, which is the Parliamentary 20 summit of the G20, because we were the president of the G20 presidency. And in that, in the context or the terror attack which happened on 7th of October, he was unequivocal and very precise in condemning terror, not only in Gaza, but across the entire globe. And he reminded the world community that India, which has been a victim of terror for last 3 decades, has been, howling over the rooftops that we are victim of terror, and no, none of the people in the world were looking at it. So they should realize that terror can inflict anyone, and everybody should condemn it in an equal manner. On 27th of October, when UN General Assembly adopted a resolution, calling for an immediate, durable, and sustained humanitarian truce, India abstained, and people
Correct.
were very surprised why it abstained. But it was clarified later that it abstained because the resolution did not have any explicit condemnation of the 7th October terror attack.
Hmm.
So, if it does not include the word terror and condemnation of the terror, then the first priority of India was being diluted, and so India did not support or negate this thing. It abstained.
Correct.
But in the same vein, on 9th of November, when there was a UN General Assembly vote condemning Israeli settlement activities in occupied Palestine territory. Now, this occupied Palestine territory includes East Jerusalem and occupied Syrian Golan Heights and the territories in the West Bank. India voted in favor of it. That means
Yes.
it went against Israel.
Hmm.
So now somebody can say, why against Israel? Because India wanted to maintain objectivity in the whole scenario. On 28th of November, again, there was a vote in the UN General Assembly, again asking Israel to withdraw from occupied Golan Heights. India was again one of the 91 nations which voted in favor of
Correct.
it. On 1st December, when Modi had gone to Dubai for the COP28 climate summit, on the sidelines of it, he had the chance to meet the Israeli president, and they had a meeting,
Yeah.
which I had said in one of my writings that, this COP28 summit and the location of UAE will give a platform for Modi to quietly push from behind a solution, a possible solution for peace, but definitely for early ceasefire and humanitarian aid.
Yes.
So where he met the president, and he again called for delivery of humanitarian aid. I got call and messages from some of independent observers saying that why this statement did not have mention of ceasefire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why in the statement, official statement which was issued after Indian Prime Minister met the Israeli president, why was there no mention of ceasefire?
Correct.
we have to understand that not everything in diplomacy works in the zone of black and white.
Mm.
The mere fact that the Indian Prime Minister has met Israeli President and sought humanitarian aid and requested that innocent civilian lives should be saved, does it not imply that it can only happen when there's a ceasefire?
Mm.
So
Okay.
that also needs to be noted. On 21st of November, South Africa hosted a virtual summit on BRICS summit, and number of leaders in the BRICS forum, they attended virtually. But knowing that South Africa was very much opposed to what was Israel doing and had condemned it publicly, calling Israeli tactics an act of terror, etc., PM Modi quietly did not attend that meeting. It was
Yeah.
attended by External Affairs Minister Jaishankar.
Correct.
And lastly, on 29th of November, which is the International Day for the Palestinian Solidarity, Prime Minister Modi gave a written statement which was there on the Twitter as well as on the official media platforms, where he supported the cause of the two-state solution and where he expressed India's deep support for a independent, viable, sovereign state of Palestine.
Mm.
So if we see all this, it is very clear that India has done what it seems objectively as a correct policy and which serves its national interest in its best manner.
Mm.
We should also remember, which you had mentioned in the morning to me also, that India is one of the countries which has sent huge amount of humanitarian aid
Yes.
for the population suffering in Gaza. I think 60, 70 tons of food
Yes.
as well as medicines have been sent.
Mm.
So we have to look at it from the entire spectrum of the activities and the positions that India has taken on this issue.
Kal Rajiv, I think whatever points I had compiled in this slide, you have beautifully explained the logic and the reason behind each of them. Now, moving ahead, my next question to you is that, in this history, we see there are many watershed movements which the entire world has gone through. Now, ultimately, the way the ongoing conflict is going on, and the way Israel has declared it as a war, and they have taken a vow that they'll remove Hamas from the face of the earth. What do you think are the larger geopolitical, and this geopolitical ultimately are going to come into geo-economical fallouts of this conflict? Briefly, can you just cover the major aspects that how do you think, going by the ongoing conflict and the keeping history in mind, how do you think the things are going to pan out in next few months?
Going by what is currently happening in Gaza, it is very clear that Israel has been given a free run.
Yes.
And free run not only by United States, but I would dare to say that even the Arab world, which is supposed to show solidarity with the Palestinians and support for the Palestinian cause, their ambivalent position has been a sort of a disappointment as far as we are concerned. Everybody expected that the Arab world will, rise to the occasion and do something. Not, I'm not meaning that they should have gone in militarily. There are several tools in hands of a group of nations which it can employ to see that they serve the interest of what they collectively want.
Yeah.
And in that, I feel that the neighboring nations and the Arab world, and as a group, has been very, very ambivalent in its stand, except for maybe a few countries like Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey, which have been very vocal. Iran, is a surprise factor, which
Yes.
in a meeting with Hamas leaders said that since you conducted this attack without our knowledge, we are not going to get directly involved. I
Correct.
mean, Hamas orchestrated an attack of such elaborate detail and planning using such tools like hand gliders, boats, etc. It could not have been done without explicit and very detailed support from its external supporters, and in which Iran is known to be one of them.
Yeah.
So the collective voice of the Arab world is missing as far as this cause is concerned.
Yeah.
They have had extraordinary summits of OIC,
Correct.
GCC, Arab League. Yesterday they had some GCC extraordinary summit in Doha, where all the leaders were there. So, but no collective voice has come out. There was a reference in the media 2 days back that Qatar had proposed that if the war does not stop and the suffering to the Palestinians, innocent Palestinians in Gaza does not stop, then the Arab world should join ranks and stop supply of oil and gas to the entire
Yeah.
world, not only Israel,
And
to entire world.
and there was
But
no response.
it evict no response.
Yeah.
So when we talk of the geopolitical response, right now it can be summed up in only one sentence, that Israel has been given a free run to achieve its immediate military objectives.
But now a word of caution here. I would like you to just tell us the way unprecedented level of attack that are going on. What happens to Gaza?
It's a very scary situation as far as Gaza is concerned. Northern Gaza has already been evacuated of its entire population of 1.1 million, and Israel has carried out aerial bombing as well as deep and invasive ground operations before the ceasefire came into effect on 24th of November. And after the humanitarian truce got over on 1st December, their focus has shifted to southern Gaza. Now, the entire population of 1.1 million in northern Gaza was forced to evacuate and run towards southern Gaza
Yeah.
for safety. Even Israel had said that, please evacuate Gaza city, please evacuate northern Gaza and move south for your own safety. But even in the earlier part of the operations, Israel bombed Khan Yunus city, Israel bombed Rafah crossing, causing mass casualties. They conducted sustained operations in a hospital called Al Shifa Hospital in Gaza, claiming that this was a command center and a nerve center for all the Hamas operations. It led to a very messy situation where people ran out of medical aid. I believe there were a number of infants in incubators who died, and they had to be buried in mass graves in the compound of Al Shifa. And at the end of it, still Israel could not conclusively prove that it was a command center. Yes, they found weapons. They found, some tunnel network going inside those tunnel networks, etc. But to serve it as a command center, to find some prominent Hamas leader, it was not there. And now they have shifted the entire focus to southern Gaza. And as we speak, the city of Khan Yunus is under intense shelling and bombardment. And 2 days back, again, as has been happening in these operations, Israel bombed two schools which were run by NGOs and UN. And again, there were mass casualties of civilians, because schools and UN compounds are the one which people think that they are going to be safe and they are going to be left out as far as the Israeli strikes are concerned. But it is not happening. So the scary picture which confronts us today is that northern Gaza has been evacuated, and from southern Gaza, two people are being driven out. But question is, driven out where? There is no way out. Egypt is not permitting any refugees inside Egypt from Rafah, and sea route is blockaded, and there is no way.
Yeah.
So they are virtually imprisoned and meet as far as Israeli attacks are concerned. It's a very scary situation, and if going by some reports that were generated in mid of October, which Israel officially denied, that they are planning to evacuate the entire Gaza, depopulated, and push the whatever is the remnant of population alive into Negev desert and northern Sinai into tented accommodation, etc. I mean, then Gaza is gone forever.
But the way the settlement, Israeli settlements are increasing inside Gaza, the way slowly saying, do you think what is the future of two-state solution? Will the two-state solution tell, or the world will be able to tell Israel to remove the previous settlement and give them the land? I'm aware it's a hypothetical question, but do you think two-state solution will be acceptable to Palestine now?
See, two-state solution, which was proposed even today when the Jordan king or the Saudi Arabian crown prince they talk about it, they say two-state solution based on pre-1967 borders.
Okay.
Now, in 1967 war, Israel occupied large chunks of territory.
Correct.
They vacated Sinai after that
Yeah.
in 1970s, etc. But a large chunk of territory that was occupied is still occupied. And now, if Gaza is gone, the only area left is West Bank. And
Yeah.
in West Bank, the way continuously the settlements are increasing, physically, geographically, there is hardly any viable territory left on the earth that can be converted into a independent, viable, sovereign state of Palestine.
Hmm.
And in this, I must say that Israel has not found support even from its staunchest ally, the US,
Yes.
the UK.
Correct.
Even in June this
Hmm.
year, much before the war broke out, Netanyahu had announced a construction of 5,600 more houses in the
Yes.
settlements, and it was downright condemned by the United States publicly.
Hmm.
But Israel is not, bound by maybe any of the international condemnations or any of the rulings. They have said that UN is a useless body, and the UN chief should resign.
Yeah.
So
No,
it's
this
a
was
very
my question. That means UN in this particular case is totally ineffective.
absolutely. Today, if you have just gone through the news, today the UN GA president has invoked Article 99 of
Yeah.
Chapter 15 of the UN Charter. Now, what does that say? It imposes upon the Security Council the mandate to examine an issue which the UNGA and its president feel that it is of highest importance as far as public safety or human safety is concerned. And
Hmm.
it has never been invoked in last 5 or 6 decades. I think the last time it was invoked was in 1960 when the genocide was happening in Congo, or something like that. But
Colonel
even
Rajiv, I think we have covered a lot of ground. There seems to be some technical hitch as far as questions are concerned. We've received few questions, and I will flash this. Uh, the question which has come is just ask Israel is losing the info war badly to the point where people justify Hamas acts. How do we shield ourselves? Because come a crisis, unlike for Israel, whole West and Arabs collectively target us. You can read it on the screen.
I can read it.
Okay.
So I agree with the first part that Israel is losing the info war or the narrative badly, and it has been losing it ever since mid-October when the first report of targeting of a hospital in Gaza came where 500 people were killed. And it is losing it not because of the military operation that it is carrying out against Hamas. It is losing because its strikes are also targeting innocent civilian population in places like schools where they have taken refuge, UN compounds, hospitals, which is not acceptable to anyone.
Yes.
So nowhere in the media would you find that anyone is supporting Hamas. No, that would be wrong to say. But people are condemning Israel because of its strikes targeting innocent civilians in places where the military strikes should not be targeted. How do we shield ourselves? I don't understand this question because we are an
Basically, he's
objective.
talking, let's say, if similar thing, maybe he has Pakistan in mind, or that how do we shield ourselves in
No, so
future?
in last about a decade or so, we've had a very good policy on
Response.
putting out the narrative before anybody can put
Yes.
it out, and we've been largely successful. So I don't foresee. And one of the things which I can mention here in this context is, an article which I had written a few days back, that what lessons Israel can learn from India.
India. Yeah, I read that article. Yes.
And one of the lessons in that I mentioned was, irrespective of the fact whether Israel is fighting Hamas across its border, or India was fighting terrorists inside its borders, it is the question of restraint, is the
Yeah.
question of not causing collateral damage
Very much.
to
Yes.
innocent civilians, even at the cost of delaying operations,
Yeah.
or on many occasions injuries to our own soldiers.
Correct. So next, there is a question which I will flash. I think this should do the tunnel warfare during conflict and on border on India neighborhood have been seen in the past for insurgency, infiltration, smuggling, etc. Efficient tunnel detection system must become a priority in India too.
I fully agree. I mean, and now the technology is there, seismic sensors are there, satellite imagery is there. All that we need to do is to firstly prioritize it, as a person who's asked the question has said, and secondly is to enmesh it into our surveillance systems.
Yeah.
We find very, very frequent reports, especially of weapons smuggling across the international border where the BSF is patrolling, and most of the time it is deep tunnels which open well inside the territory, which is beyond the immediate surveillance of the BSF post. So yes, I fully agree that it is time to learn what has happened in Gaza and across into Israel, and see that the same thing never happens across India.
Okay. Then there is another question. For some reason, I'm not able to flash it. There is a question which says that, see, some sort of vacuum has been created because the Arab countries are not able to, unite and give one opinion about it or condemn it. So this vacuum, do you think China can move in? And especially, this is now I am adding. Recently, they've had the OIC and a fairly senior representative from all the Arab countries have gone there. So do you think China, because Israel is always seen as an extension of USA in the Middle East. So in its endeavor to downgrade the influence of US in the region and improving its own region, do you see China playing a significant role?
See, China has been trying to get deep inroads into West Asia for more than a decade now. It is
Yes.
the largest importer of oil and gas from West Asia, followed obviously by India and others. And if we recall, in the month of March this year, on 10th of March, if I remember correctly, it was China who brokered a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which
And Iran.
which
Absolutely.
nobody could have anticipated.
Absolutely.
And China has had summits with the GCC in December 22. China has had, visits from its president into West Asian countries. Even now, the first port of call for the Arab Islamic Committee, which was formed of the foreign ministers and ministers of the region, they went. It was only in Beijing.
Yeah.
So the first port of call was Beijing. But what we have to remember is, this is not a diplomatic situation. This is a military situation. The first and foremost issue to be resolved is how to end this military situation, how to end this conflict, and then take it forward. And I don't think China has got adequate military tools in West Asian region to influence that, unless the Arab countries come on board with or without their active military intervention.
Okay. The last question that I will take, why I'm taking this last question, because otherwise we had decided on three questions, is Shritik Kothari, who had given a question, he has just clarified what he probably wanted. He says, this is about the previous question, if you recall, was on the information warfare by the same person. Our army has been so patient in J&K, yet the world believes that we are committing human rights violation there. Germany also stopped supplies at one time, citing HR issues in J&K. This is what concerns me.
Yeah,
You
so
give your viewpoint. I have my viewpoint. I will add after that.
Yeah, so I think said it somewhere during our conversation today, that initially the world never believed that we were inflicted by the terror attacks, and it was only in the recent decade, and especially after 26/11, that world started seeing what India has been, shouting for last 20, 30 years. And
Correct.
now that the entire world is watching terror unfold in its own homes, especially in Europe. Every now and then we have a standoff or a wolf terror attack, and we have had in the early part of the 21st century even train bombing, etc. happened. Now people have started understanding that India, yes, you were right when you talked of terror and cross-border terror as a state-sponsored terror, etc., etc. But this person who has asked the question is right. In the initial years, nobody believed India that it is a issue of terror. It was seen as a human right violation in J&K by the Indian Armed Forces.
Correct. And now on ground, Kanraji, you'll agree with me. Situation has changed. We have had a G20 meeting there. We have UAE investing in one of the biggest malls that is coming up in the valley. Ultimately, the world has realized the truth that okay, this was in response to the terrorism that the perpetrated. Though you and me are aware that we were very strict on handling HR violations by any of these persons. And half the time we were given instructions. In fact, जवानों की भाषा में बोलते थे तो बोलता एक हाथ पीछे बांध के हम लड़ते थे just to ensure that there are no violations. But
Correct.
today the truth has emerged. That is why there is so much of investment that is coming into the state of J&K. Similarly, if we see Northeast, I've heard a senior diplomat calling it a strategic patience. We exhibited strategic patience, and slowly now Northeast, if you go, it's a beautiful place. There are elections which are taking place. There are people who are deserving to become the chief ministers. There are no manipulations that are going on. So I think yes, there were issues at one time, but now, like you have very rightly brought out, the world has understood that what is the truth, and truth actually doesn't need much of a justification. It emerges. वो अपने आप बोलता है.
Absolutely.
So I think Kalrajiv, thank you very much for being with us. We have kept our promise. We are keeping this particular podcast less than 40 minutes. Viewers, I'll request you to please put in your comments in case this format is better, that we have tried to concise everything within 40 minutes. Kanrajiv, one last word from you, and then we close the session.
Thank you, sir. I mean, it's always a pleasure to be on your channel, and it was a very interesting discussion. And I hope I've been able to put forth India's
Absolutely.
position
Absolutely.
in an objective manner, and people should maybe realize that India has been doing a fine job as far as the balancing of act is concerned in supporting both the causes objectively. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kalrajiv. And here we end. I'll request the viewers to please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And please don't forget to tell us if this duration of the podcast is better. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kalrajiv.